Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan from the Leather Elves, and I'm here with Jack Pine from High Redbird. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
Hey, Robin, I am tired. Um, so you remember last week when I told you that I looked a little tired because I was raising a baby goat? Um,
Yes.
so I have somebody else raising that one because it's now on a different feeding schedule because in the last week I have had 5 baby goats born. So I am now feeding all of them. So, um, yes. So if everybody wants to tell me that I look nice and well rested, I'll know you're lying, but I will appreciate it.
Oh, come on, you guys, tell him because if not, he's going to be grumpy, and we don't want that. So, uh, it's Friday, and it's rained all day. Does that count for anything here? But otherwise, it's been good. It's been a busy. This week went by pretty quickly. But we have a lot we have a lot to talk about tonight. So, Jack, do we have announcements that we want to make? We should
So
tape record.
we really should. Uh, um, if you guys are just now tuning in, we do these live streams every single week. So we definitely encourage you guys to follow and like the Leather Elves page on Facebook. If you do that, not only will you get notifications whenever we are doing anything like this, you get notifications when Robin does sales, but you will get a direct notification whenever any of our live streams start. We do them every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, but sometimes the day can get away from you, so having that direct notification can be a little bit helpful. And of course, if you miss any of the sessions, they are all recorded. They will be over on the High Redbird YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to that, you'll definitely have access to all of them. They're all part of a playlist. We now have over 25 hours of content on that playlist. So, Robin, we have hit the point where the educational content we have put out is now measured in days, which I think is
Nice.
incredible. And of
So,
course,
no,
oh,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say you could go on a really long road trip and take us with you.
Yeah, pretty much. You could go across the state of Texas back and forth if you speed a little.
Not that we're encouraging that, Jack.
Right. Uh, well, after tonight, you may be able to go across the state of Texas back and forth at the speed limit. I'll get bored. Maybe I'll do the math and find out. Now, if you guys are getting bored, if you want to see other content, you can, of course, follow me and Robin on Instagram. That's either going to be the Leather Elves on Instagram or High Redbird on Instagram. Uh, Robin posts a ton of photos, videos of birds interacting with different types of enrichment, different toys that she makes. It's a lot of fun. If you guys are making toys at home, if you're just trying to think of ways to get your birds to interact with toys, it can be really inspiring. I try to post a ton of photos of birds, the baby animals that I am raising. So both of them we definitely encourage. And we also will tell you what the topics are going to be coming up for our live stream sessions. Now, one thing we definitely want to start making sure you guys are aware of, because we're starting to run out of time, the Place Your Bets Avian Conference is going to be coming up. We encourage you guys to register by the end of May. If you register by the end of May, that ensures that you will be showered with poker chips. No, not really. Thank you, Nick. That was a fun graphic. If you register by the end of May, it ensures that you will have time for the supplies for one of the hands-on workshop sessions to be mailed out to you. The conference itself is June 11th through the 13th. It is a virtual conference, so you don't have to book a hotel. You don't have to travel anywhere. You can sit on your couch in your comfy pajama pants and enjoy speakers from around the world, multiple hands-on workshop sessions, a virtual happy hour. So if you have missed over the last year, like so many of us have, the opportunity to interact with like-minded bird people, to get to talk to and see your friends, you will have that opportunity with our virtual happy hour as well. And I know I'm really, really excited about that. Robin, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the Place Your Bets conference?
I'm just really excited about it because the speakers are people that we've had the pleasure of working with over the years, and I think it's a really well-rounded group of speakers. We've got, people talking about behavior. We've got Dr. Club talking about first aid. We've got Miguel Santos, who's going to be talking about how training affects avian welfare. There's so much, and obviously my thing is enrichment. And behavior as well. And I know you're going to be talking about some of your experience and how that can translate into at home. So there's just a really lot of good information and fun too. I mean, Jack and I try to make ourselves as accessible as we can to all of you, and we really want this to be a comfortable conference where people are participating and really, getting something that they can make their own through it. So, all right. So,
Well, and I think one
tonight,
more exciting thing we do need to mention about this conference, one more exciting thing, we have the Georgia Fletcher Memorial Scholarship Fund. A portion of the proceeds from every registration will be going towards this scholarship fund. It's a scholarship that goes through the Quaker Parakeet Society towards avian veterinary students. So for Robin and I, it was incredibly important that we do something that helps to contribute towards the future of aviculture. And, in a previous session, we talked about ways that you guys can contribute towards conservation, ways that you guys can contribute towards the future of aviculture. By registering for this conference, you would be helping to support the future of aviculture. So it's a really easy thing to do. So that's part of where the funds go for that. Part of your registration fee is the materials that are going to be mailed out to you. So we really try to, include just about everything but the kitchen sink in your registration. So it should be a ton of fun.
and there are surprises too. So you never know what you're going to get in the mail when you register for the Bets conference. So yeah, fun stuff going on. Tonight's topic is one that I will be perfectly honest. Part of the reason that Jack and I decided to do this is because on Facebook, if I see one more person say that their bird is hormonal and that's why this is happening, I might have to leave Facebook. I don't know. It's not. Well, the title is A Reality, Not an Excuse. So using the term hormonal behavior has kind of, like it says there, has become a default for unwanted. So if your bird's doing something that it's never done before, and all of a sudden, you don't like it, and he's nippy and he's biting and he's screaming and he's this and he's that, well, it's hormonal behavior. So I'll just, chalk it up to hormonal and be done.
Well, and okay, so for me, the way that I'm going to put this is, so working with women, it would not be acceptable for any time a woman was frustrated, a woman was, you know, irritable, if something didn't go right, for me to say, "Oh, is it that time for you?" That would not be acceptable. That would not always be the case. Sometimes things just didn't get done right, and it's frustrating. Sometimes things weren't communicated, and that's frustrating. And either way, we still just need to figure out a plan to move forward. So I think that's the important thing to focus on here. So yeah.
Because the thing is, it's not an excuse. It is what it is, and I gotta say, Jack, if you did use that at work, you probably wouldn't be as pretty as you are right now. I'm just saying. So, and you're
I
right,
can be
Shelley.
pretty with a black eye.
Shelley says that she pictures my head exploding every time she reads that, and it's true. I mean, it's a possibility. So, if I don't make it some Friday night, it's because my head exploded after reading that on Facebook. But so I want to talk about, it's hormonal time. It's hormonal time. Well, it's hormone season. It's because of the hormones, and it's that season. It's that time of year. So I don't know, Jack. As far as I know, it's not based on the calendar, right?
So, hormone, especially when you talk about birds in captivity, it gets to be a very complicated issue because breeding season is going to be based on so many different factors. It's important for us to remember that we have taken birds from all over the world, introduced them to our home. So, if you have a bird that in its native range is breeding in, you know, November, December, but that's in the southern hemisphere, and we're now in the northern hemisphere. It could be inverted. It could not be inverted. Breeding season can be brought on by a variety of factors, such as what food is available, and especially when we have birds in captivity. For a lot of people, they try to provide a well balanced, produce mix that includes a lot of things rich in sugar, rich in fat, things that would be a biological signal to a bird, hey, maybe it's now time to start breeding. But when they're constantly available, you don't have that marker, so you don't have anything that particularly says this is when breeding season is. If it's based on lighting cycles, we have lights in our home. So again, we're throwing things off for our birds. So I have had birds of the same species with breeding setups that consistently one pair will be at a completely different time than another pair. I have some pairs where they will breed at the same time every single year, and some they will breed when they want to. And some, even though they should be a pair, they should be producing babies, especially because they're genetically viable and I really, really want the babies, don't breed at all. So
And it's
there's
true.
a
I mean,
lot of things to take.
so in the wild, it's, food availability, it's nest site availability. Is there a cavity that's available? It's available mates. We just because you've got two birds of the same species, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, going to be mates. So that's all. Those are some of the factors, just some of them that it's based on in the wild. But then at home, food's plentiful, safe cage, right? You've got a safe cage or a nest box, depending on what your situation is, and nesting material a lot of times, and you've got your human mates. So there's all of those things that can go into creating hormonal season, and so I think people get swept up in, oh, it's springtime, it's hormone season. And that's not necessarily the case. It's really, there are so many factors that go into it. And when you look at managing the behavior that is being attributed to hormones, you need to take all those factors into consideration. So we've got the hormonal behavior happening. People are, freaking out because their birds are hormonal. There are some negative effects that can come out of what people are terming as hormonal behavior, aside from behavior that you don't really want. There are other things like excessive egg laying. I mean, this is a huge problem that we see. It comes up on Facebook, it comes up in forums. It comes up as, my bird started egg laying and they've laid all these eggs, and, now they're not doing so well. And you're looking at calcium depletion at that point. And so, I'm sure you've seen this, Jack.
So I have actually experienced this firsthand. So a couple of things that I want to point out here. So first of all, so my logo bird is a female eclectus parrot because I had a female eclectus parrot. I want to point out to anybody that is watching, if you have a female bird, she is capable of laying eggs regardless of whether or not she is housed with a male, she has been with a male recently. If she has never seen a male of her species, she is still going to be capable of producing eggs. Um, Part of the problem is if the eggs aren't fertile, if the eggs aren't developing, if they're not able to get a chick hatched out, they may continue to just keep laying. If you're not paying attention to where your bird is laying, if they, if you just keep pulling the eggs and don't break that cycle, they can just keep laying. And when you couple that with other factors, a lot of times female birds, when they are in their nest, when they are in a nesting mode, they're not going to be going to look for food on their own. So they're going to be depleting all of the calcium, the nutrition in their body while they're still producing egg after egg after egg. Redbird, at one point, she got stuck in a nesting cycle. And she actually depleted the calcium in her bones to the point that we went to go to the vet, and her feather shafts were showing up darker on radiographs than her bones. So, I mean, another thing I want to point out. So, Robin and I, just did the whole not everything is hormonal, but some things definitely are. So, things like that are definitely things to take into consideration.
And the calcium depletion is such a significant issue because, like you said, the bones are showing, the feather shafts were showing up darker on radiographs. Though that kind of thing is a depletion. It's the calcium is depleted, the bone is being affected, the medullary tissue in the bone is being depleted, and it can lead to so many problems. Our birds are, they're in situations where they're not going to go look for, they may not be able to find that calcium source. If you're not in tune with, okay, this is what's going on, there's some depletion going on, you may not be providing a supplement that can help with that. And so you do need to make sure that you break up that cycle. And I know Katrina asked, how do you break up the cycle? So it's real, Katrina, it's a lot of different factors, and we're going to talk as we go further about what does this hormonal behavior look like? What are some of the contributing factors? And then how do you handle this kind of behavior? So I promise you, we will get to that. So another possible side effect of this hormonal behavior that's coming from a bunch of different reasons is egg binding. And, anybody that's ever dealt with a bird that's egg bound, it's a horrible, horrible thing to deal with. Jack, I mean, was this part of what Redbird went through?
So we never dealt with egg binding. She was able to pass all of her eggs just fine. But towards the end, she ended up having thinner shelled eggs. You know, you were just talking about the medullary tissue in the bones of birds, which to me is one of the coolest things about birds. So if you guys haven't encountered it before, so medullary tissue is going to be a specialized tissue in the bone that is designed to be rapidly storing and then rapidly breaking down calcium so that birds can use it. Because if you think about it, birds are going to be producing an egg every 2 to 3 days. Some species, it may be every single day. To get that much calcium in a single meal is next to impossible. So they'll be storing it up, they'll be breaking it down. Now, Redbird, in her situation, one of the things that we had to do is she actually had to have a hormone injection to then, break her cycle through her metabolism. And that is definitely something that I'm going to point out. I am not a veterinarian, so I am not qualified to give you the complete ins and outs of that. But it is one of those things, if you do have that as a recurring issue and it is starting to impact the health of your bird, talk to your veterinarian about that because it could be an option.
And I think too, Jack, there's a point to be made there that the hormone shots are not a quick fix for behavioral issues. When you're seeing behavior that you don't like in what you term hormone season, it's not I'm going to go to my vet and get a Lupron shot and then I'll be fine. My bird will be great, well behaved again. Those shots, in my opinion, again, not a veterinarian, but I've seen them work best when it becomes a medical issue. When it becomes,
Yeah.
that negative effect is medical, not just behavioral.
The other thing I will point out about that, another part of why you will probably view it as a medical issue and not just a management issue. Uh, Lupron shots are incredibly expensive. So obviously, it was something that I needed to do because it was starting to affect the overall health of my bird. Um, that it is an option, but they get to be more than a little bit pricey. So if your
Mhm.
issue is just behavioral aspects, I would say, Robin and I are going to go over a variety of different ways that you can work around those. But it is of course an option.
So so there are the physical effects there, and then there are the behavioral effects. And I think, the biggest one that we see that people comment on and that people complain about is aggressive behavior. And aggressive really needs to be defined. It's that, oh, he's being aggressive. Well, aggressive to me, after a lot of years of working with animals, may not be the same as what aggressive is to somebody who just got their bird. Or, aggressive looks different to everyone. So I think you need to, instead of just labeling it as aggressive hormonal behavior, so that's a double label, we need to people need to break down what does aggression look like, and what are the specific behaviors that you'd like to change. um I mean, I think, we all have very different opinions about that.
Yeah, I have consulted with people and I have had issues where they have told me that their bird is being aggressive and it's lunging at them, and the bird was using its beak to try to step up onto their hand. It wasn't a quick movement. So I think one, developing an understanding of your bird's body language. And that can be a little bit tricky because there are certain aspects of body language that are going to be pretty consistent across the avian spectrum. There are going to be some aspects that are going to be specialized to different species. And then there are some things that your bird is going to do that no other bird is going to do. Again, Robin and I always tell you it is a study of one. So learning that
Absolutely.
is important.
And I think so. So to talk about what does hormonal behavior look like, it can look like just about anything. And again, I go back to, if I see it one more time, like Shelley said, my head's going to explode. So, because everybody's like, oh, he's biting, he's hormonal. He's, plucking, he's hormonal. He's this, he's that, she's this, she's that, it's hormonal. So some of the things that Jack and I, when we've talked about it, some of the things that we came up with for what hormonal behavior looks like is a sudden behavior change, and not necessarily the same response to everyone, but it may be, I go into this bird at near this bird's cage, and the bird is, like, oh, hi, life is great, stroke me, stroke my head. And then somebody else, Jack, may go in and the bird is lunging, and it's the exact same approach, it's the same intonation, it's, there's not a lot of difference in the human side of things, but the response is very different. So you may see that. I mean, you've experienced that varied response when someone says my bird's hormonal?
Yes, I think that the important thing to point out there is that quick change, because
Mhm.
sometimes you're going to notice that your bird is going to have a different response to different people based on their interactions with it. I have birds that I work with every single day that are excited to see me and will come running up to me, and then other people who don't work with that bird regularly, they don't really want anything to do with it. They're gonna, keep a little bit of distance. So that in itself, the having a different response to different people is not necessarily an indicator, but that quick change, that can
There
be an
was
indicator of
I love this comment from
yes.
Joe. Thank you, Joe. Good training requires work. Blaming something that you claim is beyond your control is easy. And it certainly is. I mean, we're never going to tell you that we can fix everything or we can help you fix everything, but there are some strategies that, we're going to talk about a little bit further along, as to how to handle these things. So some other things that might be hormonal, and I hate even using that phrase, but territorial behavior around the cage. That may be, I'm defending the nest cavity because this is the cycle that I've gotten into. More regurgitation than you're used to seeing, which is oh so pleasant. And again, there's another thing. If I see it on Facebook, my head might explode. Why is my bird regurgitating? He loves you. Oh, really?
I
That's just a
mean,
little.
I was gonna say it's not inaccurate, but I think when you say the bird loves you, you think, oh, I am his cherished companion, and not what the bird has in mind when he is doing that. That is very much the I bought you dinner, I bought you jewelry. Now we go back to the nest. So it
Right.
may not be a kind of love you are interested in. It,
Exactly.
it should
Yeah.
not be the kind of love you are interested in.
Don't be judgy, Jack. Okay. They may be that you may see them protecting the mate. So that situation that Jack just mentioned, where you're their cherished, favorite, lovey person, and now your significant other comes into the room, and suddenly there's all this behavior. Well, that could be, part of what we're talking about here. There may be excessive vocalizations. I'm trying to find a date. I'm trying to hook up. There might be some extra vocalizations that you're not excited about in your apartment. Um, and then the last one that we really wanted to point out was, excuse me, is a change in appetite. It's if this is become, they're in this pattern, this cycle, you may see extreme changes in appetite, or them not taking that thing that has always been a favorite. Jackie, I know you mentioned this used to happen sometimes with Redbird.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said earlier when we were talking about when Redbird would get into a nesting cycle, she'd be laying eggs. She would not be interested in just about any type of food that I could provide her. So even if I'm providing her things that are higher in fat, higher in calcium, you know, for a high calcium bird safe food, kale is one of my favorite things to offer because it has a ton of calcium. But if your bird isn't eating any of those things, then you can still face problems. And so for all of this, you'll notice that we are coming back to this a change in behavior. All of these things tend to come with a change, not just a consistent behavior. So I know we had someone who was asking about they had a cockatiel that was foraging at the bottom of their cage. So I think one thing to point out there is you need to get to know your bird's normal baseline behaviors, and researching your birds and the species can definitely help you have a better understanding of that, because things like cockatiels, they are typically ground foraging birds in the wild. They're going to live off a variety of grass seeds and other things. So foraging for food at the bottom of the cage, I wouldn't call that a seasonal behavior, a hormonal behavior. That's just behavior.
Absolutely. And, in fact, I always suggest that people encourage that foraging on the bottom, with their cockatiels. And Sean, I'm sorry, Sean, but when his wife and he start talking to one another, one or two of his birds start screeching. And it's that it may be attention seeking. It may be, looking for a little more love. I don't know, and we'll never get in their heads. So we don't know, exactly why this behavior is happening. But some of the things we can do, some contributing factors that, you need to be aware of if you're going to put down, anywhere hormonal behavior, or attribute anything to hormonal behavior, or like Joe said, take the easy way out and blame it on hormones. You've got to be aware of some of the things that may be contributing to that behavior. Things like shreddables. People tell me all the time, my bird loves to shred stuff. I give them things to rip apart. Okay, so when you look at that behavior, shredding things up and ripping things into little pieces and putting them in a pile might be nest building. You know, what other kinds of things, Jack, do you know, what other kinds of things could be a contributing factor?
Well, so even just on the shreddable aspect, again, if you do the research into your bird, you may find there are certain things that particular birds like to use as nesting material. Uh, Quaker parrots are known for build own nests. They build this elaborate nest out of small sticks, so providing things like popsicle sticks, chopsticks, anything like that could be something that is encouraging your Quaker parrot, oh, hey, it's time to build a nest. So think about the objects that you are giving them, especially in relation to the exact species.
Mm.
My Quaker parrots are going to be nesting. They're actually right now, and they'll usually go through beginning to midsummer. So I'm just going to be paying attention to their behavior. And instead of giving them things like that, I may give them, chunks of 2x4 on a chain that they can then peel at, they can chew on, but it's not going to be the exact same nesting material that they are going to use. For a lot of people, I think they inadvertently give their bird a nest cavity because they think it'll make them happy. And, you know, the, so things like nest boxes, even those little cozy huts, which I know you and I have talked about before. Neither of us are a fan of them just because they're not safe. But one other thing they do is they create this little space where your bird can be convinced, okay, I have a readily available nest. I have a mate that brings me food every single day. Like, this is the best mate I could ever have. Let's have babies. So providing those nest cavities can be one of the things you are doing to encourage a nesting behavior.
And, on a kind of bigger scale, when you look at a cage, think about the way a cage is built. Most of the doors are right in the middle and the front, and they open up. And it's in essence, it's a nest box, a nest cavity, the cage itself. So trying to encourage your bird to come out a little bit, and be, not necessarily inside that cage all the time, but the boxes. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. When you've got that screaming, nippy, bitey, not so pleasant bird living in your home, and then you're like, oh, well, he really likes boxes, and you throw the box in there, and he goes in there and he's really quiet. Hmm. It made
Because
life a little bit
busy.
easier because he's busy. Exactly. It's not rocket surgery what's going on in that box. Okay. So you really have to be aware, of what's going on in your setting. So another thing, we talked about dietary stuff, and Adrian just brought up a good point that warm, soft foods, yeah, not such a great idea. If this is what you think you're seeing, it can trigger that breeding behavior. The other thing is high in sugar. And again, when your bird's not being great and you may be like, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to work on some training. You get the big bravo because you're going to work on training, but you're giving him those, papaya bits. Oh, now you've given them a bunch of sugar. And if for those of you that have toddlers, let's think about what that does to behavior. And it also, there's all that sugar. You're giving items that are high in fat. And now they're like, wow, this is great. There's an excess of food. I'm gonna breed. This is awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things to consider with sugar is just the instantaneous change in behavior that feeding food items that are high in sugar can have on a species. But if every single day you are getting things that are really high in sugar, you are getting really sweet, ripe fruits. If you look at birds in the wild, most of their nesting seasons in the wild are going to be built around certain environmental factors, including that overabundance of really rich food, because baby birds grow incredibly quickly. They need really rich food to be able to grow incredibly quickly. So if your bird is getting that all the time, that can definitely push them. I would say one of the things that I try to encourage people to think about is when you are feeding your birds, think about feeding them things like leafy greens, salad greens, green vegetables, things that are not necessarily as high in sugar, because if you think about it, for a lot of the year, that is going to be more of what your birds are going to have available. Fruit is going to be, highly seasonal, and, a little bit harder to get. So definitely just think about these sort of food items that you are providing your animal on a regular basis. But and I know it can be hard because it's really, you see a bird get excited about an almond, or a peanut, a sunflower seed. Oh God, sunflower seeds. I think I've seen just about every type of bird get excited about them. And then you look at them and realize, well, it's over 40% fat. Like, I think I would get excited about them too. So, and there's nothing that says you can't do that periodically. You can't use for training. You can't use it as a rotating part of your diet. But take a look at the overall diet. I think a lot of people, the main concerns I get, people will feed a ton of food that is really high in sugar, really high in fat, and they'll actually overfeed their birds. So what that means is your bird can go through, pick and choose what it wants to eat. So even if you are giving them a lot of leafy greens, you know what? Those aren't as exciting. I'm going to throw those to the bottom of the cage. I'm going to eat all of this papaya, all of these almonds, all of these sunflower seeds. Then not only do you have a bird that's still getting a disproportionate diet, but you also have a mess to clean up as well. So I know that has nothing to do with hormone season, but it is just still something to think about.
No, it adds to it. And I think too, you've got to think about, what's, if you're using those high sugar, high fat, as a reinforcer, they're not getting as much as if you're giving them a big bowl. The other thing is when your bird's eating and messing with the food, again, they're not biting and they're not screaming. So it's that same concept as of, well, I gave them the box. Yes, they're eating and they're probably eating a little bit more, but they don't have a way to burn that off. Megan has a question. So we shouldn't include fruit every time we make chop. No, I mean, a little bit, Megan, is fine. It's just not an overabundance of anything.
So, and it is going to highly depend on the species of bird you have. Obviously, if you have something like a lorikeet, which is a nectar and soft fruit eating bird, you can't give them, you know, dried pellets and almonds and, bits of kale. They're not going to be as excited about that. So you do need to make your dietary accommodations with your specific bird in mind, and just take a look at what you are feeding overall. Because for most birds, if you were feeding them just fruit, I would say that has the potential to run into something problematic. If you include fruit every time, but it's only this percentage, and there's also these other things in there that are going to be good for your bird. If you're watching your bird and seeing them, those other things, again, I feel like we say this every single week, but observing your bird, taking notes on the things that they are doing, the things they are interacting with, that is going to be one of the most useful tools in your arsenal. And you have a flying dinosaur in your house. Like, I don't understand how people don't want to just watch them all day long. So
It's so true. And I think, the last one that we're going to talk about, and we have talked about this one ad nauseum, snuggling. Okay. Making promises that you can't keep. Alicia, I hope the kids aren't on. And if they are, block their ears. But so this is the deal where you go, I've told this story 1,000 times. You go on that date, things are going really great. You're like, yeah, you know what? I'm bringing this one home. And you go to the door, you put the key in the door, you turn the door, you turn around and you get a peck on the cheek and they walk away. Wait, what? that's not what you expected. Huh, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. And so we make these promises to our birds. And, we do the stroke down the tail and we do the under the wings and we do my favorite one is around the beak. Okay, so this one again, Diane, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to use rocket surgery yet again because this is not rocket surgery. When you look and when a bird's regurgitating for another bird, this is how the beak goes, right? One on the other. And if you're doing this with your bird, well, isn't that interesting? So, you've got to be aware. And sometimes you get caught up. You're like, "Oh, look, he loves." Yeah, I was at I got to tell this story. I was at a big store on the East Coast, and there was a guy who had a exhibit booth beside me, and he had his bird and his wife. He had a cockatoo, and the cockatoo was on his wife right here for the whole day, and the bird was given one of these, and you can't see all of me, but it was, not a pretty sight. And finally, at the end of the day, I said to the husband, does he know what's going on? Does your wife know what's going on there? And he's like, "Oh, that bird loves my wife." And I'm thinking, dude, you should be jealous because that bird's getting more than you are today. So, and this is someone that's in the bird industry. So you gotta be aware of what you're doing. And Katrina, their backs and wings, it can, bring out that hormonal situation, because if you observe bird behavior in the wild, if you observe just bird behavior in your home, and you're going to see that that's the kind of thing that they do to one another when they're with a mate. And Jack, do you have...
Yeah, so allopreening is the act where birds are going to preen each other's feathers. Most of their feathers they preen on their own, but there are a few areas where they have a hard. So if you have a bird in a flock, a lot of times they'll go to their flock mates and have them preen things like the top of their head. That is just a general socializing behavior. When you see birds that are starting to preen under the wings and into other areas, down the backs, that's usually a sign of birds that are a little bit closer than just general flock mates. And so I think it's important for a lot of people, you can call it cuddling, you can call it snuggling, but I mean, depending on what you are doing with that bird, realistically, I would call it second base. And that's going to be the issue there. There's a couple of ways that this can go wrong. One, you can have a situation like Robin was talking about, where the bird it has an expectation, and that expectation didn't get mad. So, Robin, if you were in that situation where you gave all the signs and you did not get what you were expecting, I would think either one, you could be really upset about that. Like your feelings could be hurt, you could be angry, or you could end up looking at the situation like, maybe I was too subtle. Next time we go on a date, I'm going to be a little more direct. And we can see the same thing happening with our birds too. So I love how Karen points out everything below the neck is a birdie erogenous zone. And again, everything below the neck, a bird preening can reach themselves. It's, the top of the head around here. They can't preen those feathers on their own. They do expect their flock mates to do that. So like head scratches for a bird, that can be a great way for you to build a relationship with a bird. But reaching around under the wings and down the back, that can be a good way to ask a bird out for a second or third date.
It's true. And, there's a lot of conversation going on in chat. And Linda, when you were talking about the greens, Linda said, what do you do when you've tried time and time again to give them any type of greens and they won't eat it? You're just wasting money. I would suggest, Linda, trying, it's not, it's important that they have those, but if you're giving them, a balanced kind of diet overall, don't be, stressing about the greens. But what I would suggest is try offering them in a foraging activity. Try offering them in something that they've got to work for. We've talked about contra freeloading before, that birds prefer, or animals prefer, to work for their food. And I know, Linda, you're going to tell me right now that you have lazy birds. But I know you don't. And so I've seen them forage before. So you want to, think about maybe offering it in a different way. Make it fun. Wrap a piece of green around something that's a little bit higher value. But just try the presentation a little bit different. That may or may not help. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, and I mean, like, I know we have a lot of people that are asking about different aspects of the diet. Again, we are not going to completely tell you what you need to do to feed your bird. I think anybody who thinks that in an hour they can completely restructure everything you are doing with diet in a way that is, healthy for that bird is, you know, not being realistic. If you are not having these issues with their bird, if you're not seeing those like rapid changes in behavior, if you've consulted with a veterinarian, if you've consulted with, breeders, and you've established your diet based on that, you may not need to make any changes. So don't think like it's something you need to be doing, but we are offering it as something to think about if you are seeing these issues arise.
Okay. And I think it's not just about diet, it's about the whole picture. And that's kind of, we want to take that approach. And so we've talked about the contributing factors. We've talked about, how do you kind of avoid some of those things. But then, okay, so now we've got this situation going on. You've got some behavior, you're seeing behaviors that you don't particularly want. You think they may be attributed to some of these hormonal contributing factors, for lack of a better way to put it. So what are we going to do? There, it's not, you can't just ignore it, but you don't want to encourage it. So you've got to address it in some way. The walk away, well, I'm just going to walk away and he's going to immediately start behaving. That's not reality. It's not well, if I ignore it, it'll go away. Whether it's hormonal or not, it's not going to go away if you just ignore it. So you just have to think about ways to not encourage. Don't do the stroke. Don't feed the high fat, high sugar foods. Don't offer the boxes. Don't offer the shreddables. Those kind of things that we've talked about that do maybe encourage it. So you want to think about how to avoid those things. The other thing is you don't want to completely change your behavior and how you interact with your bird. I think about this, that, so, if you've got a family member who's not behaving right, do you close them in the closet and just not deal with them till they decide they're going to behave right? Well, I don't want to know if you do, because then that gets into all kinds of legal stuff. But really, truly, I mean, if there's a behavior you don't like, we anthropomorphize everything else about our birds. Why don't we anthropomorphize how to fix things? So maybe if things, you change it a little bit. You don't want to completely ignore the bird. You don't want to stop interacting. I've seen that a ton of times. Hey, Jane, you're not that late. So you don't want to just, I'll stop interacting. And when he decides to behave, I'll start interacting with him again. Well, that's absolutely not going to work. I mean, have you seen that happen, Jack?
Yeah, again, like we've talked about this, getting to interact with a bird, getting to observe a bird, for me, are incredible things. So I don't understand. I know people have, said that, oh, well, that bird's hormonal right now. So we're going to put it in another room and nobody can go in that room except for when we're giving food, when we're giving, water, when we're changing the cage. So a couple of things to point out. One, if your bird is not truly hormonal, if you are just having behavioral issues, if the bird is trying to communicate something with you, if you withdraw all interaction from that bird, it is going to have to work a lot harder to communicate whatever it is trying to get across to you. So if you have a bird that is yelling, you can see an increase in yelling from trying to do that. If you have a bird that is nipping at you, biting at you whenever you go to do anything with the cage, if you don't have any positive interactions to build that relationship around, if it just sees you once or twice a day, you can see an increase in biting and nipping. So, you may need to change your approach if your bird is hormonal, if they are nesting. But I would absolutely say there is not an instance I can think of where you should just completely withdraw all interaction that you would have with that bird. You may need to change things, adjust your approach, but don't eliminate it.
Maybe it's protected contact. Maybe it's, we talk about protected contact a lot. And most people think of that in terms of, bigger predators that you might work with in a zoo setting, or I know Joe works with some birds that might be more appropriate in protected contact, or not more appropriate, but I'm sure there are some situations where you work with birds, sometimes working with birds of prey. Protected contact is the way to start, or if you're going through a rough patch. And it doesn't have to be forever. You modify that behavior a little bit, you work on that relationship. We talk more and more about relationship every single week. And if you work on protected contact, you work through the cage bars, you do targeting, you do, stationing things through the cage, you're still interacting, but nobody's getting hurt, and there's not, they're not being punished. They're still getting that interaction, and it can still be a positive way to work with your bird.
And we point out all the time, so protected contact interactions. One, there is such a lower risk of you getting bit or getting scratched. But for your bird, they are not going to have the same concerns about being grabbed, about you touching them, especially if it's, a rehomed or a bird that comes from a situation that you're not completely familiar with. If they had previous things that startled them or upset them, interacting with them utilizing protected contact can provide them that sense of security in their environment as well. So when you're not going to get bit, when your bird knows it's not going to get grabbed or hit, you have the opportunity to build a much better relationship. So protected contact, especially with a brand new bird, can be a great way to develop a relationship. You can use that to progress towards a free contact setup, but you can also utilize protected contact for the life of your bird. I know Amazons come to mind for me, because Amazons, if anyone is not familiar, they have opinions. They have a very clear understanding of how they want to interact with their world, but they do still want to interact with it. So utilizing protected contact, if you want a bird to step up, maybe it steps up onto a perch and not directly onto your hand. Maybe you're target training inside the cage instead of, using a target stick, rather than target training outside the cage using your finger. You're doing the same behaviors, you're getting the same interaction, you're building that relationship with the bird, but you are changing the approach to make it safe for both you and the bird. So I feel like there are a lot of people that have an opinion towards protected contact. And I think it's important to recognize that, it can really help you accomplish your goals.
Absolutely. And I think, it doesn't have to be forever, but if it is forever, that's okay too. I think that's one of the things we want to get across. So in this time that you're experiencing what you're defining as hormonal behavior, there's probably an increase in frustration for you. And so we've talked about this before. As much as we're reading their body language, they're reading ours. And so if I'm frustrated and I'm like, oh, why do you have to keep screaming? Or, oh, you bit me again. Your bird's going to pick up on this. And so you've got to kind of work on, okay, how do I problem solve? How do I address this in a different way? How do I come at it from another angle so that it's not, it's not frustrating me. I'm not, being super negative with this bird. You've just got to kind of adjust, and so that it works for both of you.
Yeah, I would say if you ever think that you are in a bad mood or you're having a rough day and your bird cannot pick up on that, you are wrong. They most certainly can. In fact, there have been numerous studies done with birds where they have had different keepers where they interact with. They will put masks on the keepers. And they have found out that the birds are able to assess who the different people are, assess what their relationships with those people are based on body language, how those people are moving. So I guarantee you, if you are stressed, you are going to be holding your body differently. You are going to be moving differently. Your bird is going to pick up on that. So, Robin and I have talked about this when you're setting up training sessions. You definitely want to set yourself up for success. Make sure that you're thinking about those things, because if you go into it frustrated and mad, you're probably not going to get what you are hoping to accomplish, and you may actually take several steps backwards.
Absolutely. I know Cindy asked, can you define protected contact? So, Cindy, protected contact is anywhere where there is the bird can't get to you. And it, like Melissa said, it's in a cage or in a carrier. There's some kind of barrier there. That it's a phrase that we use in zoos and in facilities a lot. Protected contact is one of those phrases that we do throw around, and I'm sorry that if we didn't explain it. But if you're working with a bird, you can do targeting and through protected contact while they are in the cage and you're outside. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
I would to make the modifications for protected contact based on your individual bird, your individual species. There's going to be some sort of barrier. That barrier could just be space. So when we mention a target pole, that's going to be something for the bird to touch at the end of a stick. Believe it or not, I actually don't have a target pole next to me. I do. I lied. I always have them. So this is a target pole on the end of a chopstick. So if I was targeting something like a budgie, this is going to be close to the budgie's face. There is all of this space between my hand and the budgie. So this could be a way of working protected contact with the budgie, just with space. Obviously, this would not be enough space to be considered protected contact with something like a macaw. If you're working through the cage bars, as long as your bird can't fully reach their head through, if they can't reach their body through, that can be protected contact. And if your bird can fully reach its body through the cage, you may want to revisit that cage because it may not be the best option for your bird. But yeah, just using some sort of barrier between you and your animal. It can be a variety of things. It's not, don't think of it as just like, no, I need to have a solid wall between me and this animal. There can be a lot of different ways that it can work.
Mhm. And, I think so these are just some strategies. I mean, training to me is one of the better suggestions and better strategies on how you can deal with this behavior that you're seeing that you're not liking. But it's not an excuse. It's not, oh, I can't do this anymore. My bird's hormonal. I'm going to give it up. This isn't the right house for it. I'm not the right owner. I don't have the right skills. Those are excuses. Those are what we talked about. It's a reality. It's not an excuse. And I think the bottom line as to what you can do when you're seeing this behavior that you believe is hormonal behavior is not give up on your relationship. It's not about just, okay, I can't do this anymore. And it's not forever. So work through it instead of work through it instead of against it, if that makes any sense. You problem solve, figure out, okay, what can I do to make this situation better? How can I avoid this situation happening again? So you may go through some of these steps, and, you remove the shreddables, you remove the boxes, and things go back to normal, whatever normal is for you and your bird. And then, so down the road, you're like, oh, he's fine now. And you toss him in a box again. And then there's that ugly behavior rears its head, and you're like, oh, wait, you got to figure it out. You got to work through it again. So just don't give up on things and problem solve. I mean, do you have anything else to add about that, Jack?
So, one of the reasons Robin and I have been doing these sessions every single week for months now, we wanted to try to make the information that we have available. We wanted to try to help you guys connect with each other, because I think having that information available, having people that you can talk to available, definitely makes bird ownership a lot easier, because it is a completely different animal than most of the other things you may be used to. Bird body language, bird interactions are not going to be the same as interacting with a dog, a cat, any of those things. So I would say, try to get as much information on different topics if you are having issues as you can. We've been trying to put things together, but there's a lot of different aspects to aviculture, avian care. If you guys have anything in particular you would like to see us cover, feel free to reach out to either Robin or I. You can send Robin a message through the Leather Elves on Facebook. You can send me a message through the High Redbird group on Facebook. Let us know the sort of things that you would like to see that would help you guys. But yeah, understanding that, you know, not everything is necessarily going to be forever. There is going to be ways that you can work around things, ways that you can work through things. You just may not know what those steps to take are yet. So, watching things like this, getting information can definitely help you guys out there.
Absolutely. And, like I said in the beginning, we really want to be accessible to you guys. We want you to be comfortable asking us questions, making suggestions. But really, the bottom line is we want to help you problem solve, and we want to help you enjoy life with your birds. I mean, we're all super lucky, and it sounds sappy in it, but we're super lucky to share our lives with them, and the fact that we get a piece of that natural world in our homes all the time is like, it's an amazing gift. And you've made a decision that this is how you want to share your life. And so I think you've got to treat that with some respect and problem solve. Really look at what's going on. Yeah, Chris, absolutely. The environment can assist in behavior management. There's so much that goes into it. And when Jack and I meet with you guys every Friday night, we love doing this live stream. We laugh, we joke. Hopefully, we give you good information. But it's really about how to improve that quality of life, how to improve animal welfare, because first of all, you wouldn't be listening to a parrot live stream if you didn't care. And, we just really want to give you as many tools as we can, but know that in an hour and 15 minutes, whatever it is every Friday night, we can't fix all those problems. We can't give you all the answers, and we don't have all the answers. We're never going to say that we have all the answers, but hopefully we can point you in the right direction, and we can get you thinking about resources. So that's, hopefully this made you start thinking about some of the things that we can do, that you can do at home if you're seeing this behavior that everybody keeps referring to as hormonal. And maybe we can make a change. So we've got a trivia question tonight. Jack, you going to read us the trivia question?
Yeah. Well, do you want to tell everybody what they could potentially win first?
Oh, well, it's up there. All right. So
okay.
What they could potentially win is the Discovering the World of Parrots Australia. It's a 2 DVD set. And so there it is right there. So the question is, what is the
What
name? Oh, you're going to do it? Go for it.
I can do it. What is the name of the specialized tissue found in female birds' bones that can provide calcium during egg laying? I'll ask it again. What is the name of the specialized tissue found in female birds' bones that can provide calcium during egg laying? We did talk about this earlier in the episode. The really nice thing about this for both me and Robin, we actually trust Nick to be able to follow what the answers are. He gets them all time stamped, so it's very, very easy for him to go through and do that. He's going to go through, he's going to find an answer as you guys post those things. And
All
it looks like we
right.
have an answer.
We do. Go, Sheila. So Sheila says it's the medullary. I think we have a winner. So congratulations, Sheila. And I will get that out to you. You know, Sheila just ordered from the Leather Elves and I already shipped it. Oh, could have put it in there. All right. So Sheila, you just have to place another order. That's all there is to it. But the good news is, Sheila, if you decide to do that, the Leather Elves, we're running a sale. It is 25% off. And it does exclude kits, parts, boxes, and the conference. But it's on all toys, 25% off. And the code is no excuses. So hopefully you learned tonight that there are no excuses. We're going to figure out ways to fix things here. But we wanted to thank you guys with 25% off. The sale is going through next Friday, and you can order at theleatherelves.net. So take a look at that, and maybe you can, get some stuff that'll help with that hormonal behavior. Give your bird something to focus on besides loving you. So,
Well,
if
you guys. Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, if you guys are looking for a way to keep learning more, to keep, finding out more ways to take care of your bird, we do just want to remind you guys you have about a month left to register for the Place Your Bets conference. Again, so BETS is going to stand for Behavior, Enrichment, Training, and Science. So we are trying to approach this with all the different aspects that you guys may. Oh, and we have, poker chips too. Trying to approach this from all the different ways that you guys may think about your interactions with your bird. So we will have speakers from all over the world. We will have multiple hands-on workshops that you guys can do. It is a virtual conference, so you can attend it from home without having to book trap. There's sounds now too.
See, Nick and
Nick
Riches
is
are
just
live.
proving that different types. Oh, yeah. Nick is proving that different types of enrichment can really have more of an impact on your animal's life than you ever thought possible. I think Nick and Robin both have been looking for some way to just make me stop talking periodically. And I think Nick found it. So you're like, what's that sound?
So, long story short, we would love to have you guys join us for the BETS conference. We're really looking forward to it. I know a lot of you have signed up already. We just really want to make this as informative and as fun as we can. I personally find that laughter really helps people learn. I've never been for the stodgy, serious kind of learning. And you can address serious topics with some laughter. So hopefully, we do that. And next week, we have our topic for next week is Approximations 101. Let's make a sandwich. Think about that one for the week, guys. Yeah, you're going, what are they talking about? Well, you'll have to tune in next week and find out. So have a wonderful week, you guys. It's always a pleasure being here on Friday evenings with you. And take care, and we will see you next Friday. Night.